Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Hi everybody, welcome to Heart Radio with Dan and Ann. We're coming to you on the X-Zone broadcast network, www.xzbn.net. And tonight, I want to tell you guys, we have a wonderful program for you this evening. We're going to be interviewing our guest, Veronica Houston, tonight. And on this program, she's going to be giving firsthand testimony of the deep corruption within the Watchtower. Angela, could you introduce our guest tonight?
Sure, Dan. So Veronica Houston is an ex-Jehovah's Witness as well as an activist for the ex-Jehovah's Witness community under the name Smurf Girl, also her YouTube channel name, by the way. She was born into a family who were among the original Jehovah's Witnesses, so 6 generations, the family also being among the original Watchtower shareholders, who she claims are corrupt to the deepest level with firsthand knowledge and is working on getting the truth out about this. Welcome, Veronica.
Welcome.
Hi, it's nice to be here and talk to you guys.
Well, it's great to have you, Veronica. You know,
Yes.
I just want to start out with, I want to get to who you are. I want to tell everybody tonight, this is a real serious show for me. I think you should hold on to your hat. We're going to get a rare view inside the Watchtower, probably that most people have never seen. I feel like, Veronica, like I'm talking to someone within the bloodline of the people who started this thing. I mean, you know the big picture. So I just want to start out by asking you, who are you and why should we pay close attention to what it is that you're wanting to share with us tonight?
Well, I'm basically the descendants of the original members. Like, I'm from a 6th-generation Jehovah's Witness family, or International Bible Student family, to be more specific, of the, pre-1914 generation, where my great-great-grandfather was school friends with Charles Taze Russell. And so being school friends and then being family friends, and they were both from wealthy families. And so when, Charles Taze Russell was beginning Watchtower, he had the majority of the first members to join were investors and friends that he, handpicked, that he felt were deemed worthy enough to be of the anointed and to be in that elite group of the 144,000. And so, the Watchtower secrets get passed down from those original families. We were called first families, and we were treated as, as special, being from the, faithful and discreet slave class, the generation that would never pass away. And I never realized how different I was treated as a Jehovah's Witness. I thought everybody kind of was treated that way, or everybody was in the organization that long, and I didn't realize how many different things that I knew that other people didn't. Not until even 2 years ago. And I went on YouTube and I realized how in the dark the great crowd is, because I never really hung around the great crowd. I just never did. You only stick with those original families. And we were the ones also that go to the annual meeting and that sort of thing.
Yep, and just for a little clarity, the great crowd are the ones that are going to live on the earth. They're going to remain on the earth. And the anointed are those who are going to heaven, right? There's two classes. There's a heavenly and an earthly, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the great crowd were basically going to be our earthly subjects. That's the way it's worded in Watchtower. And I don't think the great crowd really realized how when we say that, you will be our earthly subjects and we are going to be kings in heaven, co-ruling as equals with Christ, how literal we mean that. We mean it. But they teach the members to speak very benignly when they repeat those things from Watchtower, so that they don't realize how serious we are about that.
What kind of special treatment would you say you guys got when you say that? Was this like your grandparents, or was this your family? You say maybe up to a couple years ago you were getting some type of different. Was your family part of the anointed class or the earthly class?
They were very deceptive with that, because they, after 1935, when everyone wasn't of the anointed anymore, they would skip a generation or sometimes 2 generations, so that that the people, the regular members of the great crowd wouldn't catch on what was going on with the original families, because they said how the generations overlap so much that we need to kind of, skip a couple generations, or, so that not every firstborn from every single generation was of the anointed. But they did see themselves as anointed. They just wouldn't do it publicly. But so it's funny to hear them talk about the overlapping generation, because way back in the day, it meant something completely different.
What's interesting is it sounds like you were in for different reasons. Like when I was in, it was the truth, God's name was Jehovah. This was the organization different from everyone in the world. We knew God's name and nobody else did. And, but it seems like you were aware of a bigger picture. Like for some reason you came out to share with us the big picture. And then that's what I guess I'm wondering, like you were in for like a different reason. Am I wrong? Did you ever think it was the truth?
No, that's exactly right. No, I thought it was just crazy ramblings of my great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather and all the generations, because there are certain secrets that are passed down throughout the generations, because we were the ones that were entrusted to write the articles, or the ones entrusted to work at the service desk, where you were completely aware of all the mistakes and all the things, but the reason why we were willing to cover for it is because it was the mistakes of our descendants. And we viewed ourselves as Watchtower, where you were just, when you also had a financial gain for it, being shareholders, where there are private shares that are owned, that the original families own. And so you want it to continue because you get a yearly check based off of profits, based off of sales of buildings and things of that nature. And so a lot of times it is just a financial reason that people stay.
Wow. Did you guys ever get a cut? Do you ever know, like your dad or your grandpa ever got a cut? Have you ever seen like a check?
I knew about it. My great-grandfather, Grandpa Floyd, he was in control of the shares, and I never knew exactly how much, but there was kind of a tanking. When I was aware of it in the early 80s, there was kind of a tanking after the whole 75, and there was some of the shareholders actually sold their shares. And then after great-grandpa died, then my Uncle Robert got a hold of the shares. So I'm not sure what happened, what's going on with that, because then there was kind of a rift in the family. And I'm glad that the rift happened, because if I would have gotten hold of the shares, I don't know if depending on how big that check is, you never know if you're willing to talk or not. But I always knew I felt guilty for what we were doing.
Well, what happened in 1914 for the audience?
When the date failed, that was really devastating.
And for the audience, that means that Jehovah's coming back, right?
Yeah, they thought it was going to be Armageddon, and they basically thought it was going to be the rapture. They thought that they were going to then go and be kings and priests, and they were all going to basically just disappear. Like their bodies were going to disappear, and they were going to, and Armageddon was going to come. And so when it didn't happen, of course, they had certain fail safes in place. They had the photo drama of creation already set to go to take focus off of the huge great disappointment, like 1844 with the Adventists. They knew this is going to be, a huge disappointment to everybody. So we have to, take focus off of that. And of course, the money that they invested, my great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather had invested in the photo drama of creation. And basically they had kind of all lost faith in it. But and 75% of the members left.
And don't forget, we're our audience is not necessarily Jehovah's Witnesses, for sure. So they don't know about that movie that was made. So for the audience's sake, a movie was made for a cover-up should that date go by and it doesn't really become the end of the world, if you will. And so they made a plan with a movie that was 8 hours long so that everybody would buy into what they had planned next, just to keep from losing members. Is that about right?
That's exactly true. And they didn't realize exactly how many members were going to walk away, because they were all friends and they were all wealthy and influential businessmen. And so, Charles Taze Russell was extremely disappointed that so many people left. But the major investors, including my great-great-grandfather, stayed. And they're like, well, how are we going to pick up the pieces? How can we recoup our money? We had, the equivalent of the shares that they sold was about $50 million in our days, money. And so they had invested a lot. And so they bought the shares from the people who left, and they're like, you know what, we can't be as exclusive anymore. We can't just be this little 144,000 group. Maybe because they would sell subscriptions to Watchtower. That's how they made their money. They would sell these books, like a religious encyclopedia called the Studies in the Scriptures, and that's how they made their money. And they thought, well, maybe we'll include our subscribers as members, and we'll include other people, but we need to keep them in two different classes because we're exclusive and we're the ones who know what's going on. And so they had like more of a general membership, but they wanted to distinguish between a general member and the exclusive members. And so that's how the Anointed and the Great Crowd, came about. And they just basically, it was just them trying to recoup their money. And I don't think they even realized what a big thing they were going to end up creating and how well they would be able to, deceive people.
All right,
to this,
Veronica,
to this
Angela, Veronica, we're going to have to take a commercial break. We'll be back with Veronica Houston coming up right after the commercial break. You can learn more about our guests by going to our YouTube channel, Smurf Girl, SMURFGIRL.
You're listening to the Heart to Heart radio show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. You can learn more about our show by visiting heart2heartradioshow.com or check out our personal website, prodigaljourneys.com. Again, we'll be right back after the commercial break.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
All right, we're back. Tonight, our guest is also the co-host of the show, Veronica Houston. Our topic tonight is firsthand testimony, deep corruption of the Watchtower. You can contact Veronica by going to her YouTube channel, Smurf Girl. And Veronica, if you just want to continue on where you left off, I think you were talking about shareholders and, these shares and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the one thing that I really want to let, regular Jehovah's Witness members know is that back in the day, before 1914, that the whole idea of being on the earth and being left behind, when the anointed were taken to heaven and being raptured, if you were left behind on the earth, we called that a penalty and a punishment. That was not a rich reward. It was only after 1914 when Rutherford very cleverly started to spin something that was actually a punishment called restitution because you weren't faithful enough to go to heaven. And he spun the end result of paradise, that 1,000 years of basically torture, of having to suffer through the Great Tribulation and suffer through, Armageddon, was actually seen as a bad thing. You were a foolish virgin to have the door to heaven shut on you. And they don't realize that they have been sold something that is actually hell on earth. And they think it's great. And it's not.
Yes, and you know something? I'm going to say this. Up till the time I left, which was, it's been 20 years for me. But up till the time I left, Angela couldn't believe me. And she says, I want to go to the Kingdom Hall. And I used to tell her, we call ourselves good for nothing slaves. And that always bothered me. I thought, and the brother would say, we're good, the Watchtower, it would say, we're good for nothing. The ones who are going to remain on the earth, the ones who are going to be in the paradise, were called good for nothing slaves. And I always used to wonder, why do we call ourselves that? And what we're doing, we ought to be doing.
Yes, and when Dan did take me to one of the services, and 3 times in the service, they would ask this question, and then the answer was always supposed to be, which I didn't know, but they said, that's yes, so we are the, what is it again, Dan? The good for nothing slaves. And then they said, and yes, and we're doing, and what we ought to be doing. What we're doing, we ought. That's right. And I thought, what in the world? I was just mortified. I mean, they were happy to say this, and they look so downtrodden and so, I don't know, head down. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? It's like any psychologist knows that if you tell somebody that, they will be that. You tell a son he's stupid, or you're good for nothing, you stupid son, and he will be good for nothing. Everybody knows that. They've known that forever. So I was just mortified.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it says in Watchtower very clearly that the great crowd is only there to assist the anointed. That's all they're good for, is just to distribute the literature and to get them to heaven. And it actually got so corrupt over the years, where all they, I forget my whole reason, what I was going to say.
Oh,
but
you're
just
gonna.
that they didn't care anymore, or that they wanted to actually make the great crowd as unrighteous as absolutely possible, because the men in charge, like Fred Franz, the president of Watchtower, during the 80s and whatnot, they were afraid of being usurped and having their spot in heaven taken, and they wanted to make sure that their spot in heaven wasn't taken, and so they wanted to make sure those good-for-nothing slaves were as unrighteous as possible, just in case.
And then they would go through the 1,000-year not tribulation, but the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, and then maybe they might have a chance to get it right in that 1,000 years. Isn't that what you said? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I always wondered, why Satan was going to be let loose again. It's like, okay, we just came through a tribulation. We just came through. I know it was to test, supposedly, the retest us. But what was interesting was that we just went through hell on earth. And now we went through the tribulation, and now we get 1,000 years rest, and then Satan's going to return to beat us up once more and to retest us and to make sure one more time. This sounds like mental abuse to me,
I agree.
So my question,
and all the anointed, then they don't have to suffer through any of that, because they were the only righteous ones that were resurrected. They were the only righteous ones to go to heaven, and all the unrighteous are going to be left behind on the earth. All the while, the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to think they're the only righteous ones there. And in fact, they're just as unrighteous as everybody else, and that's their ultimate deception.
Could you imagine if the people in the Kingdom Hall knew that they were throwaways, know that they were crutches, know that they were, just people to hold up these so-called anointed that call themselves anointed? I don't know why they're more anointed than the people in the hall. You know what I mean? They only drink the wine. This is amazing stuff. And, my question is, Veronica, like, what made you, this question keeps coming to my mind. What made you finally say, I got to get this out? I got to say something about this. Why didn't you just walk away?
After I started watching people's YouTube videos and seeing how corrupt everything was, and being in just a regular Kingdom Hall, because I was in a Kingdom Hall where there were a lot of anointed and a lot of the first families in it, and I started to visit some of just the regular Kingdom Halls, and I saw how they were just abused. They weren't treated the exact same way as the ones who were of the anointed, and it just hurt, and I just couldn't let it go, and I knew I was going to be scared for my life. I knew if I started to say certain things out loud, because there's not been anybody from the first families that's willing to walk away, because they're either just too selfish, they don't care, they're getting a financial gain, or the status. And I don't know. I just couldn't stand seeing people be hurt like that.
And then your grandfather, he was kind of influential a little bit in that department, right?
Yeah, he hated Fred Franz. Yeah, the president of Watchtower, he did not like it when he became president, and so then he started to go apostate, and he did it very quietly. When Raymond Franz left, Fred Franz's nephew, when he got kicked off of the governing body, he saw how people were treated if they started to speak up against Watchtower, and so he was clever enough to know somebody who is on the right side of things needs to stay behind and not leave, to make sure that the secrets of Watchtower get out. And so he would just tell me as much as he possibly could, and he's always told me, just wait and bide your time, and try and wake up the rest of the family. And I tried to, I really, really tried to wake up the rest of my family, and they weren't willing. They all had their own selfish reasons for it. And so it's like, well, fine, and I had to give up my inheritance. I had to give up everything. And then my mom died because of the blood policy, and my grandmother died because of the no blood transfusion policy. And it's like, okay, I've got nothing else to stay behind for. My dad was an abuser, and so I'm like, okay, now I can't wait any longer. The only ones that I really cared about were dead. And so it's like, now I needed to get me and my daughter out and hide. and then slowly start to talk.
So it's Ray Franz. He wrote Crisis of Conscience. I think a lot of people know that book. So is Fred Franz his son, or I don't get the
His
Fred
uncle.
Franz. Ah.
Yeah, he was his uncle, and that's kind of a public display of how the first families go, where Fred was the uncle and he was of the anointed, then his nephews then declared to be of the anointed, and that was kind of because Fred didn't have any kids. And so it's usually the firstborn or the first fruit that then declares publicly of being of the anointed. And then it travels on, throughout the generations. And so with me, it was my great-grandfather, and then I was to declare publicly that I was of the anointed, because you're named as their replacement. For when they get old, you have to replace them, so there's always a remnant left behind on earth. Because after 1935, I know most Jehovah's Witnesses would know this, nobody else was really supposed to be of the anointed except replacements, but no one understood what that meant. But a member of the true, original family who was of the remnant would name their replacement, which would usually be someone in their family descendant line, a firstborn, a first fruit. You would inherit the shares of Watchtower, and then you would just carry on and write for Watchtower or be on the governing body, the ones who are entrusted at the very top.
How do they keep track of the 144,000?
They really don't care. They call them congregation level anointed. The ones who partake at the memorials, those aren't really seen as anointed in Watchtower's eyes. They'll talk about that a lot in Watchtower, where not everyone who professes to be of the anointed really is. When they call it being truly of the anointed, if you have to be from a first family, you have to be named by another person that's anointed, and you would never partake at the memorial publicly. You only partake once, and so that they distinguish, like, oh well, do they partake at the memorial every year? Okay, yeah, they're not one of the first families.
Okay,
So
all right,
Veronica.
Veronica. We're going to have to take commercial break here, and when we come back, I guess I want to ask you who's controlling this thing and who's still in control. So right after we get back, we're going to have to take commercial break, but we'll be back with Veronica Houston, and our topic tonight is on firsthand testimony, the deep corruption of the Watchtower.
You can contact our guest, Veronica Houston, by going to her YouTube channel, Smurf Girl, SMURF. You've been listening to the Heart to Heart radio show with Dan and Ann on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and that's www.xzbn.net. Our website is hearttoheartradioshow.com. We'll be right back after the commercial break.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, They conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
All right, we're back. We've been talking with our guest, Veronica Houston. We're so glad you joined us tonight, Veronica, and we've been talking about our guest's firsthand testimony of the deep corruption of the Watchtower. And you can contact our guest tonight by going to her YouTube channel, Smurf Girl. And Veronica, I just wanted to continue on here. A burning question of mine has always been, who runs the Watchtower today? It's like nobody knows. It just seems like it's just a nonprofit and a good organization, and they build kingdom halls in a day, and everybody goes in and builds them, and they share the money. They take the money from this hall and build another one, and it just seems all good. But I know behind it, I'm wondering, how do they make their money? What do they, who's running this thing? Who owns the kingdom halls? Who owns this organization?
Good question.
Yeah, it's all under the corporation name of Watchtower, but the shareholders, the private shareholders, still own it. The original families still own it, and it would be their descendants. And the sad part is that the majority of those are not even Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. They just don't care anymore, and so it really is just a corporation, and where nobody, the real board of directors, like the ones who are really in charge, are the helpers of the governing body. They're cleverly disguised, and they'll say, we're just helpers. But the president of Watchtower is one of the helpers, and the governing body now I see is basically just mascots, just bad people to emulate. Like they pick the worst people to emulate that were of the anointed, the most corrupt. And the way that a lot of the shareholder families describe the governing body nowadays, they basically represent 7 deadly sins. And it's just kind of a joke, where I heard a couple of them say, yeah, I wonder if we put Stephen Lett out there and people will start emulating. I wonder if people will emulate his facial tics on the platform because they emulate these men, or will they get homophobic like Tony Morris, where they just think it's a joke. And it's like, this isn't a joke. There's almost 9 million people, and they're being hurt, and they're shunning their families. And it's when you get these rich, wealthy white businessmen and these wealthy families, that's the way that they act. They think that they can just control people. And
I've heard,
it's just really sad, and that's always the way it's been.
I've heard of a guy that was in Bethel, and he told me that I mean, you're exactly right. He was in Bethel, and he was a part of some of these meetings where they were putting together the Watchtower. And it sounded like what he told me was just throw anything in there. They're just a lost sheep, just throw something in there. And they did. A lot of the time it's just regurgitated information that they've said before. Me and Angela were at an assembly a few years back, and Angela wanted to see what an assembly looked like. And when we were there, it was the same drama as I saw in Houston 20 years earlier. about, scaring the heck out of people who would want to leave the organization or who would dare miss a meeting. It was fear. You were going to be destroyed. Jehovah's going to kill you. And I'll tell you, it just runs on fear. A lot of the people in there are mentally ill, and they get more mentally ill over time. And this is crazy. And you know what I think is interesting, what you said, Veronica? That the anointed today, in their view, are thrown away. Because I know that's true, because when I was in there in the 60s, they said the anointed class was already pretty much filled up, plus or minus a few. So when we saw somebody taking the wine and the communion, we thought, oh, they're just faking it. They're just fakes. But it's interesting that I know they reopened up that door to drinking the wine again for people and said, we're going to collect some more of them. But what's interesting, don't you think that would be interesting if within the congregation, the people, if they knew that the anointed were even throwaways in a sense,
Yeah, they use the term, well, they just profess to be of the anointed. If any and members of the anointed in the congregations will even say, oh yes, I've been professing to be of the anointed, for 20 years. It's like, do you realize when you say you profess to be of the anointed, that's a derogatory term that the ones who are from the first family started to use, where even they don't realize the words they're using are derogatory, like good for nothing slave and things like that. You're going to be our earthly subjects. They repeat it. But we taught them to use a very benign voice to read the articles. Even when they read it in their head, they'll read these derogatory things about themselves, and they just hear it very robotic, and they don't understand what they're actually saying. And that's what I want to try and do, is connect the dots and read the words how they were meant to be said. And what you're saying about having the words just regurgitated, ever since Russell died, that's exactly what's been happening. Because my dad was a researcher in the writing department, and my mom would write articles, and the majority of the time they called it reworking an old article, and they'd put a couple new ones in every once in a while, but the majority of the time they just kind of reword it a little bit, switch a few things. When they say, oh, we need to clarify something, that's a reworked article. That is an old article where they're like, oh yeah, let's change this a little bit. The viewpoint's a little different. That's just an old article that's from way back in Russell's day.
Man, oh man.
I was in there. I was in the generation prophecy, which was based out of Matthew. This generation will by no means fall away to earthquakes, nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, earthquakes. And they said that the same time we saw earthquakes and famines and that we'd also see the Great Tribulation. So they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until the late 80s, where when you count from 1940, 70 or 80 years, a generation, to the 1980s, early 90s, when the 90s started to come about, late 80s, the Watchtower started to regurgitate the generation prophecy. And what I found interesting was I was a serious Bible student. And I said to myself, what in the hell are they doing? What are they doing? What do they mean that the generation isn't a generation as we know it? A generation is a this and a that. And then I think at the same time, they said, well, the anointed aren't going to lead us into the new system. It's going to be the elders now. And they started changing. And then my brother got the big head, I'm going to be the one, leading people in through the tribulation. And I was like, I'm done. I believed in this generation. I read the Revelation book 2-3 times. They were promoting. And when it passed, I thought 5 million people were coming with me. And I was the only one. And they looked at me with these dumb eyes. Where are you going? We have the truth. Where are you going? You don't have no truth here. And so, I mean, they don't care. They don't even apologize. The Watchtower does not apologize to anybody. It's been prophesying since the 1800s, every single year, all the way through. They never say we made a mistake. They say the light got brighter.
So, I've got a question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, they know they're on borrowed time. Ever since 1914, they knew they were on borrowed time. Like even 75 was just a membership drive. It was kind of staggering a little bit, and it's like, well, let's try it again. We haven't done it in a while. Let's see. They knew it was going to fail. They knew. And like my father was one of the ones where he was helping write those articles, and he was very young at the time, and he knew it wasn't going to happen, because I asked him, I said, well, what did you think was going to happen? And it was like, well, we just needed to keep people's hopes up so they wouldn't leave.
Oh, brother.
And I just sat there and I was dumbfounded. I'm like, how can you do that to people? And he's like, well, they'll get over it. They always do.
That's crazy. Hey, Veronica, we used to hear things like, since Dan got out, that is, that people are using witchcraft and stuff like that to get these articles written so that the food is coming down from, witches and demons and that kind of thing. Is there any at all truth in that?
Yeah, they use what they call as a spirit-directed channel of communication, but they try and, with the writers of Watchtower, distributing the spiritual food, they all have their own little technique, but they feel that they're channeling their mediums, and they channel angels. So it's different than being a spiritist that's channeling demons. It's angels. But they all have their own little technique of meditation, or sometimes they'll use like a spirit board or the tarot or candles and chants or whatever it is. But
who are the ones doing this?
Usually members of the first families. They're the only ones who are entrusted enough to keep the secrets. They would never just let anybody do that. You have to have something invested where you're a family member.
Wow. Is this still a money machine, this organization? I mean, are they still very wealthy?
It's been a while since I've known how much money's really circulating, but it seems like they're kind of tanking. Because when it was a couple annual meetings ago, because I've known Tony Morris and his family since about the 80s, and the look on his face, I've known him for a while. And
Veronica, could you hold that comment, Veronica? We're going to have to take a commercial break. So Veronica, Angela, when we're back, we'll continue our discussion with our guest, Veronica Houston. Her YouTube channel is Smurf Girl.
SMURF Girl. You're listening to the Heart to Heart radio show with Dan and Ann on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. For more information about Heart to Heart radio show, visit heart2heartradioshow.com. That's a TWO in there. All right, guys, we'll be right back. And again, you're listening to Heart radio show with Dan and Ann on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. We'll be right back.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Heart Radio Show with Dan and Ann. And our guest this hour is Veronica Houston. And you can contact her by going to her YouTube channel, which is Smurf Girl. SMURFGIRL, Smurf Girl. And we're talking with Veronica, who is sharing her firsthand testimony on the deep corruption within the Watchtower. And Veronica, I'm just so glad you've come on. You've honestly, what you're saying is freed me. I got to tell you, I spent 40 years. I was starting to get mentally ill in there. And the reason I was getting mentally ill, I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you why you've released me from that. Because I couldn't do enough. I couldn't pass out enough watchtowers. If I passed out 20, they would tell me, you should have passed out 30. How many hours did you get in? Did you give Jehovah your best? You could have pioneered this month. Did you pioneer? It had 5 weeks. Dan, you should have commented in your own words. Sexual things that were very basic to most people, going through the bloom of the youth, where you've totally felt dirty. You felt like you were like a prostitute. Yeah, I mean, they constantly brought out the scriptures. If you even look at a woman to have a passion, Jesus said you've already done it. So we had an endless line going to the elders to confess our sins. The sisters had to go to the elders and confess if there was any type of strange sex other than the norm. They had to go before 3 men. And I think this is just terrible.
I agree.
And unfortunately, the reason why everyone is kind of like an obsessive compulsive mental disease, and it really is because of Fred Franz. He was very obsessive compulsive. He was very neurotic about medical procedures and anything to do with doctors. And it's amazing he lived to 99 years old. And, he was never married. He was probably a virgin the day he died. And he was just very weird in the head about sex. And he made everyone who listened to every word he said, and they all became a bunch of Fred Franzes. And if people knew how neurotic and crazy he was, I mean, just look at the members. Look what you went through. That's what he was going through, and that's what he made everybody be.
Well, Veronica, I just think it's one thing that I really would like to see. I don't know how they do it through the court system, but to see to it that the Watchtower is forbidden or under penalty of law to allow these elders to ask these questions that go on for, I've heard it, I'm telling you, so crazy many times. It goes on for 4 hours where they have to regurgitate it every which way, backwards, forwards, crisscross, inside out, until they just want to throw up. And I say it's traumatizing these people. Their sin is embedded into them. The guilt is unbelievable. And I think that it's a crime, and I think that it needs to stop. And I'd like to see them forbidden from ever doing that ever again. And apparently their rule books say that they're supposed to do it like that, so they're only doing what they're taught to do, but it is so sick.
Yeah. Well, the only reason why the great crowd have to confess their sins to the elders is because they haven't accepted Christ's ransom by partaking at the memorial. If they partook at the memorial, they would have their sins forgiven, because of all the anointed. It says we're viewed as sinless. We've had our sins forgiven. The only reason why you need to confess to the elders is because you haven't. And if they just made the connection, if they just realized, everything would be that much easier, and they'd be freed.
What's weird, Veronica, is the Watchtower seems like, when I first come in there, they talk a little bit about the paradise. When they come to your door, they say, the earth's going to be a paradise real soon. We're real close. And I think people get excited about that. because, people go through a lot on earth here. They get divorced, they lose jobs, they lose kids. There's a lot of things that happen. So the witnesses circulate around. And when they come to your door, they say, look, it's going to be all over. God's original purpose was to make the earth a paradise. And it's the same purpose today. And you go, wow, that sounds so good. They say, yeah, look here, nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Wouldn't you say we're living in that time? And you go, yes. Well, did you know God had a name, Jehovah? Yeah, come on in. And you go, wow, I didn't know. Well, now you can have a personal relationship with him. And when you come in, all you hear after that is don't make a mistake. Don't ever leave. Don't ever think about leaving. Don't ever miss the meetings, because this is your contact. Read only our literature. Do not read any other Christian literature. Get rid of all the crosses out of your house. Get rid of everything that you have that's worldly. Come inside. Stay out of the world. Get out of her, my people. All the churches, get out of them. And they don't go to weddings. They don't go to funerals that are held in churches. They completely do that. But what I want to say is, this is like a slow deterioration of yourself, because, like you said, your first invitation into the hall is everybody's running up to you and welcoming you into the family. You're all talking about the end. That's all you ever talk about. But I just want to say, once you're in there, it's the fear. It's a fear-based, shame-based. And I almost lost my life in there. I was almost shamed to death, and there's no reason for it.
No. Well, this is one thing you mentioned that is not even a Watchtower teaching, is that God's going to make the world a paradise. In reality, in Watchtower teaching is that Jehovah's Witnesses are going to have to build the earth into a paradise. They're going to have to clean up the mess, clean up the dead bodies, and replant the earth and do it themselves. Because the anointed feel it, because they're unrighteous, they're going to have to do it for God. God's not going to do it for them. They're going to have to do it, because it will be hell on earth. It's going to be a disaster. And that's their way of repentance for being so unrighteous, that they have to do the work themselves. And maybe after 1,000 years, they'll grow to perfection, and maybe they'll make it if they do it good enough. And that's the catch. That's the clause that most Jehovah's Witnesses don't even realize what they're signing up for. God's not going to do it for them.
One of the scriptures that I used to read over and over is seek righteousness, seek meekness, and you might be concealed. Might be concealed. And like you said, there are no guarantees.
Yeah, it's beyond crazy.
And they don't even. And they're hoping for a hope that's not even going to happen anyway. Like, they're just going to be sitting there and waiting. Like, it's not. I personally don't believe in the whole Armageddon thing, and so it's like not one Jehovah's Witness has ever gotten their reward, but they think every anointed member's gone straight to heaven, but they're still in the ground waiting. They've never gotten what they've been promised, not one of them, and they keep waiting.
And
they've sure deluded themselves, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know what bothers me? Here's what bothers me. I've watched a lot of witnesses die, and they are angry. They are angry. My grandfather was angry. He was a great witness all the way till he died, and he was upset when he died, and the family covered over. They said, oh, he just had a nervous breakdown. No, he was pissed. It didn't happen in the generation. It didn't happen in 75. It didn't happen. So here he was laying on his deathbed. He gave every bit of his might to passing out watchtowers and awakes and literature that's outdated a month after it's printed, 2 months after it's printed. Where is the Revelation book? Where is the Paradise book? Where is the Truth book? Where is all of this stuff? It's in the garbage. And they say this is Jehovah giving them light and giving them enlightenment, and we can't hardly wait for the new light. If people don't think there's an indoctrination going on in this Watchtower, they're crazy. I mean, it shows the power of the indoctrination, because they're still blindly following, although they have evidence, they have the internet, they have all of this evidence to the 1800s to show the insanity, but they refuse to look at it. Isn't that powerful?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's people like my family that they know that the members who finally figure out the real truth, that it's a lie, it's on their deathbed. And so by the time they figure it out, they're dead and they can't warn the next generation. They can't, they're not there. And so they know that they've got them trapped.
You know what's weird, Veronica? You know, when I talk to witnesses who come to my door, I don't tell them I'm a witness, but when I talk to them, I say, do you guys know about the disgusting thing standing in a holy place? Do you know about the generation? They don't know nothing. They like, what are you talking about? Do you know about this book and that book? No. And I tried to get an old Revelation book, and they said, why do you want one? They said, we have a new one. I said, well, I want the old one. Why do you want an old one? Well, I'm doing some research. Well, that one's outdated. And so it's amazing. It's amazing. You know what my hope is for the Watchtower? I have a hope for them, that they turn around. They've got so much power over so many people, millions of people. They've got their minds. And it could be used for good if they told those people who they are, that they were made in God's image, that they were here to flourish and blossom in a beautiful way, unique to everybody else, that God was inside them and trying to unfold in them in some beautiful, magnificent, unique way, just like a fingerprint, different from everybody else. And it would be an illumination of God himself through you. Just think about that. But anyway, guys, hey, we got to wrap it up here, Angela. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Veronica, thank you. But we have to wrap it up. I've so enjoyed this conversation with you, Veronica, and I know Angela has too.
Yes. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you for being with us tonight. And for more information about Veronica, just check out her YouTube channel, Smurf Girl, and she's got a lot to say.
All right, we'll be back next week with another edition of Heart to Heart Radio Show with Dan and Ann. And to find out when our show can be heard on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for more information about Heart to Heart Radio Show, visit heart2heartradioshow.com or check out our personal website, prodigaljourneys.com. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Good night.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.